Hi everyone, this is Julie Bruns. Welcome to the Peace and Possibilities podcast. I want you to thrive and be happy, peaceful, and content, no matter where you are on your journey. This podcast shares stories that will show you how it can be done, no matter what your circumstances. You'll be inspired and come away with a new spark of an idea. Never forget, anything is possible. New episodes are released every Wednesday. Subscribe, rate us, and leave us a review. This helps others find our content and get happier sooner. To possibility and beyond. Hi everyone. My guest this week is Barbara Huson, and Barbara is a 7-time author. She has written several books. Her newest book is Rewire for Wealth. And she is a fabulously smart person who has lived an interesting life and writes about all of her lessons in her books. I so encourage you to check them out. Here is my interview with her.
I had in my first book, Prince Charming Isn't Coming, and the editor thought it was corny and she took it out. And the line was, "In our deepest pain lies our highest purpose." I thought it was a great line, so I got it in another book. But that pretty much describes my life. Money was a source of deep pain for me most of my life. I grew up wealthy. Money was just always there. The only advice my father ever gave me about money was don't worry, which I thought was great advice. And I didn't have to. I married a man who was a stockbroker. But I found out very early in our marriage is that he was a compulsive gambler. And every year for 15 years, I'd find out he was gambling my money, my inheritance away. And the insane part is that I continued to let him manage the money because that's how terrified I was and intimidated by anything financial. Finally, after our divorce, I decided money's not my thing. I do not want to deal with money. Well, I have this theory that if you don't deal with your money will deal with you. And I got tax bills for over $1 million, way over $1 million, for back taxes my ex didn't pay, for illegal deals he got us in. My ex had left the country, so I was left holding the bag. I did not have anywhere close to $1 million by that time, not even close. And my father wouldn't lend me the money. So that's when I knew I had to get smart. And I started reading the books and going to classes and do all the things they tell you to do. And my eyes would glaze over and my brain would fog up. And I just felt terminally stupid. But I had 3 daughters. I was not going to raise those girls on the street. I kept going to the ATM. It kept telling me I had no money. I was in pure panic. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. But staying stupid was no longer an option. And I have this theory that when you make a commitment, the down to your toes commitment, the universe revolves to help you reach your goal. And I was at the time a journalist writing for the San Francisco Business Times. And I got a freelance project to interview women who were smart with money. And those interviews changed my life. I not only got smart about my money, but I wrote my first book, Prince Charming Isn't Coming, How Women Get Smart About Money. And now 7 books later, here I am, an expert on women and wealth and power. And I am talking to Julie. So who would have thought?
The crazy thing, I remember reading that story in one of your books about you were like put on this case to go interview these women. Was that a totally random assignment or they're like, give us some ideas? And then the fact that you were interviewing women about money, was that totally random?
No, it wasn't random. It was there was a not-for-profit in San Francisco where I was living called Resourceful Women. And they wanted to do a research project on how women went from being ignorant to smart about money. They wanted to study that. Mm-hmm. And so me being a writer, they hired me for this freelance project to do those interviews. Mm-hmm. They actually fired me. They wanted me to write it up and I wrote it up. And they didn't like the way I wrote it up, so they fired me and they had someone else write it up. But I took what I learned and wrote my first book, which I wrote it in 1997 and it's still selling and I'm still getting royalty checks to this day.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm glad they fired me. I might not ever have written the book.
Yeah, I didn't know that part of it. That is really interesting that you did the research, you had the words, and then they said, we don't like these, we want someone else. And you're like, okay, well then I'll just do it myself. That's
So I was sure I couldn't write worth a damn. So not only was I fired, and I remember I was devastated because I was sure this is my life's work. I was sure this is my life's work.
Mhm.
So I was devastated that maybe this wasn't my life's work. And they told me I'm a terrible writer, which I was. But hey, everyone's a terrible writer at the beginning. Most people are.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. I encourage everyone to go check out your books because the story really is inspirational. I want to ask you one quick question about when you went back and you said the first time you found out that your husband was mismanaging your money and doing all the stuff you didn't know about, and then you didn't say, excuse me, I'm going to take over right now. You still said, no, I think I'll wait. Or like in your mind, what was that? How come you said, wait a minute, this is not right? No, I know you were saying that already. I guess my big question is
Why the hell?
Huh?
Why the hell didn't I take
Right. Why?
charge?
Do you know, looking back now, why you didn't just take over right
Yeah.
then and there? Just
I
because
totally know. I totally understand it. Because I was raised with the absolute belief that women do not make or manage money. I was raised that making and managing money is a man's job.
Mhm.
I was sure, I was positive that I was totally incapable, that I couldn't do it.
Okay.
It never occurred to me, honestly, it never occurred to me to take over.
Okay.
Now, to a person like you who has some brains in their head, that would seem like, well, of course you take over.
Right.
But I was so indoctrinated, so programmed with the belief.
Yeah, I know you've written a lot about, and I totally have done the research too with the neural pathways and the neuroscience and how ingrained your beliefs are literally in your brain. And then the more you say them and the more you think them and the longer they're there, the deeper they are and the harder they are to overcome. So if that's what, like you said, that's you're taught your entire life and that's what your dad's saying to you and that's what you learned and that's what's like in your body, you're not even thinking, oh, I'll just change it. You're thinking, I can't. There's not even, it just doesn't even occur to you. It's crazy.
And also, I didn't understand the words. I didn't understand. Like, I didn't know where my money was.
Yeah.
I didn't know what a bank, I didn't know what a mutual fund was. I didn't know what investing was about. I didn't understand any of that.
So when you were growing up and your husband, so back to, you grew up in a wealthy family and you married a stockbroker and he was managing your money and you were a mom. Were you thinking, what were you thinking you want to do with your life? Were you thinking I'll go to school or I'll be a mom and I'll have a job on the side? Or were like before all this happened, were you thinking this is what kind of career did you want to have?
I didn't want to, I was programmed. My parents were very, very controlling and I was programmed to have babies. That was my life. And I had my first baby. And right after I had her, I wanted another one. It's like I was hungry for something.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it must be babies. And what happened after I tried to get pregnant and I couldn't get pregnant. And it turns out I had all these tests that they told me I would never have children again. And so that's when I went into this deep depression. We actually adopted a baby, which helped. But I decided to go back to school and get my master's in counseling psychology because I needed help. I figured if I went to counseling psychology, it could help me.
Right.
But I knew I wanted something. There was something in me that wanted something that there was. I just feel like my body turned off its baby making capabilities because I was destined for other things. And then 12 years later, I got pregnant. Right when I was on the verge of a divorce, I got pregnant.
That's always how it works too. You see those movies where people adopt, they're told they can't have any, and then they say, okay, fine, I'll just put it out in the universe. I'll do it another way. And then they get pregnant, or I'll just pursue this other passion over here. And then it happens because, well, we know from the research that you and I have been reading and studying for years that it's happening because you're taking your mind off it and you're not trying so hard to have it. You're just doing something else. It's just fascinating how the universe works in our minds,
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, As you're going along and you are raising your girls and you are divorced and you're starting your business and you're writing and you're doing all these things to get out of that hole that you were in, what were you doing to remain peaceful and happy and content and sane, raising kids while you're trying to do all that? What were you doing along the way to stay sane and healthy and kind of happy?
I really got deeply immersed in spirituality. I think that saved me. And in particular, A Course in Miracles. Very involved in my spiritual and in developing my spiritual relationship.
Okay.
I really got involved with my spiritual growth.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did is that's when I discovered the Course in Miracles. It's a spiritual text. And I also went to 12-step meetings like Codependence Anonymous, Al-Anon, and Debtors Anonymous.
Okay.
And I think my spirituality, really getting grounded in it, is what saved me. And it's very much a part of the work I do today.
Did you actually go seeking when you said, okay, you knew you needed something else and you found A Course in Miracles? Did you start reading books and get recommendations for people? Or did you just start, I'm going to join the Debtors Anonymous, I'm going to read this book? So I'm just always curious how books come into your lap, because you know that it's always divine intervention. It's like, oh, I guess I'll look at this. I'm just curious if someone recommended it or you found it.
Well, what happened is I was not a very spiritual person, but when I was living in Kansas City, and that's where I grew up, and I first found out my husband was gambling my money away. And I was terrified and I didn't know what to do. I was growing a business. I got my master's in counseling psychology, and I started a business, career counseling. And this was in the 70s, and there was no career counseling outside of a university in Kansas City. And I had a business, was doing great. And my secretary at the time, she was very involved in Unity. And she started giving me these books, these spiritual books that were published by Unity. And then when I moved to San Francisco, and I was really craving spiritual direction, I was standing in line at a grocery store. And not the person behind me, but the person behind the person behind me, they were talking about A Course in Miracles. And I remember leaning back and saying, what's the Course in Miracles? And they say, I don't know, it's a spiritual book, and we just got it, and it was being published in the town that I had just moved to.
Wow.
In a house that was just a few blocks from my house. So I went to the house, this is in 1982, and I got the course, and I have been a student of the course ever since.
Wow. That's so cool how that stuff happens. I love that. I love hearing those stories. Okay, so obviously that path is, and everyone's path is just a squiggly line. No one really ever says, I'm going to start here, and then you're just going to go straight up and get exactly where you think you want to go. Obviously, there's always a lot of twists and turns. What would you say to people that are looking, men or women, young or even in middle age, that are trying to figure out how they can use their strengths and give back to the world and do something meaningful and purposeful? What would you say to those people, or what do you say to younger people that want to have a meaningful career and just haven't found it yet?
I used to be a career counselor when I first started. And it's so interesting. People only came to me if they were desperate, if they were really unhappy and they didn't know what they wanted to do, or they were in a job they hated. They only came to me when things got really bad. And I'd always say, well, tell me what you're thinking of and tell me what you're looking for. And they had no idea. Within 20 minutes, I knew exactly, or pretty much, what they were looking for. They told me. But it took me a good 6 weeks to get them to discover it. And I'm telling you that because everybody inside, we know deep inside, not consciously necessarily, but we know what it is meant for us to do. We know. And so what I always suggest is to really listen to your intuition, to listen to what the things you are drawn to. Like for me, I was always drawn to shows about writers, books about writers, I always wanted to write, but I knew I couldn't write. I didn't even like to write in college, but it was always there. And I don't know, I just finally started taking it seriously. So, and like when my kids don't know what to do, I always say, look for signs. Look for signs, externally, and really ask for signs and look for signs externally and internally. You will be shown when you really want to know. You will be shown.
You're right. I love that. Look for them. And we tell our boys this too. Look for them and ask for them. I wish someone would have told me the ask for part. Well, the trusting your intuition, definitely more like, deep down inside. I didn't know that when I was in my 20s and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I was drawn to certain things and I knew what I liked. But I didn't know it was so easy to actually ask. And, like that book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, Ask. No, it's not even them. It's Esther Abraham Hicks. It's Ask and It Is Given. But it's basically like going out there, whether you're a religious person or more spiritual. I'm more spiritual than I am religious, but going out and saying to the universe, to yourself during meditation, or even just to someone you love, here's what I really want, and then start thinking about what that's going to feel like and what it would mean for you. When you'll get the signs when you do that. But I also have been learning a lot more about the clarity around that, because if you're wishy-washy and you say, I really want this, and then you say something else that you want that's not aligned to what you said you wanted before, the universe gets confused too. Like, you said you wanted this, and then you're saying you want this, and you're kind of you're going back and forth. And then when there's not definitive clarity, no one's really sure what you want, including all of the things around that are going to try to help you figure it out. And then you kind of stay in that place of not knowing for longer than you need to, if you can just get really clear. And I think the trick to getting clear is the knowing yourself, like you said, trusting in your intuition.
Whenever you're unclear like that, it's always because there's an internal conflict. A part of you wants to, and a part of you doesn't. And it's really getting to understand what the conflict is. And the conflict basically always boils down to a conflict between your soul and your ego, between love and passion and excitement and fear.
Yeah.
And so if you could start unpacking and disentangling those two, the part of you that wants to and the part of you that's scared to, and really engage in dialogue with each part, that's how you can lessen that conflict and start getting some clarity.
I totally agree. And I think, and I know I've experienced this in some of your books. I don't know if it's written this way in all your books. You have spots for journaling and asking yourself questions. And I know years ago, I would skip over that stuff. And I'm like, all right, just get to the next. I want to learn. But really the learning, the deep learning and the quicker learning comes from you asking those questions and then listening for the answers. I think that would be another big thing I would tell people, like, especially when you are like me, addicted to learning more and spirituality. And I'm addicted to it, but in a good way. It's exciting to me. I love it. I love the concept of it. And, I thrive when I think about it and talk about it, but it's the knowing. And you can't know if you're trying to figure out the answers all the way out here. You actually have to start asking yourselves those questions and getting clear about things. And it's hard. And it's easier to just keep looking for the answers out there than to say, wait, what is it really? But you'll get there so much quicker if you do the asking of yourself first, right?
Yes, you ask and notice when you ask what's coming up in you. Notice the feelings. Notice if there's any resistance, because those are all clues. Mm-hmm. The more hyper vigilant and aware you can be about what's going on in your internal landscape, and healing that will give you clues to what needs to happen in your external landscape.
Yes. Do you think you would know as much as you know if you hadn't gotten that degree in psychology and counseling? I mean, it's kind of like funny, you wanted to learn that. So it's you did that to learn more about yourself, but it helped you to know so much more about the financial world and all the stuff that you wanted help with and were scared about. Do you think you would have discovered that eventually if you didn't have the education in the psychology and the counseling?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I know this was mine to do, because I call myself a financial therapist. Mm. So a big part of the work I do is the counseling, is the coaching And I love it. I'm passionate about that. So it was just, I was led, and I just followed. That's how I feel. I feel like I've been led and I just followed. And so who knows what would have been, but I know this is mine to do, the financial therapy and the writing
Yeah.
and
That's
the
awesome.
group work.
Is there anything you wish you'd learned a lot earlier in your life or career?
Yeah. I wish I'd learned earlier that I didn't have to prove myself, that I was okay just the way I am. That took me about a good 50 years to figure that out. So I wish I had learned that I didn't have to prove myself, that I'm lovable and worthy just the way I am.
It's a big one. I think
Yeah,
that's a big one for probably everyone on the planet, right? Everyone's thinking this. You can
I
see
don't
it.
know. I
I
don't know. I mean, I don't know, but
yeah,
that's one thing I wish I had learned
yeah,
early.
I love that. What do you think is the greatest gift you offer the world every day?
Hmm. I don't know if I offer the world a great gift, but hopefully the people that come in my path, they're in my orbit, what I like, this is going to sound so corny, but what I offer them is love and possibility. There is the possibility of things getting better.
Mm,
There is the possibility of you doing what you're here on this planet to do, and that you're capable.
I love the, I'm not sure who said it, but I know that I've heard it from Marie Forleo about the, you wouldn't have the dream unless you had the potential to make it happen. Like it doesn't,
Richard Bach said that.
okay.
Richard Bach, the author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I used to have it on a poster in
Oh,
my.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I know, I figured it was older than that. But a lot of people are, use that as like this, it's proof that if you're thinking about it and you want it to happen, you have the capability to make it happen. You just have to believe it. And then you have to obviously do the work and all of that. But
The poster I had said in big, you are never given a dream without the possibility to make it come true. And in little letters, but you're going to have to work at it. And it's like, yeah, I had a dream of being a writer ever since I was in third grade. I used to read to but damn, it was hard.
yeah.
And I didn't believe and I had to work at it. I really had to work hard at it.
Yeah. And if you didn't have the dream wasn't as big as it was, you wouldn't have worked to make it happen because you would have given up and said, well, it's not, I don't care about it that much. But when you care about it that much, that's why you make the effort to make it happen.
There's something about a dream that's a destiny
Mm-hmm.
that even if you give it up, it won't leave. So I had the dream of writing for years and years and years and years. I didn't write my first book till I was 46.
Wow.
So I had a dream of being a writer for years. And I kept saying, no, I can't write. And I would try it and I can't write. It took me 7 years to write that book, but it wouldn't leave me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you know that a dream is yours to do.
Yeah.
You can choose to do it or not, but it's yours to do when it doesn't.
Who was telling you couldn't write? You were telling yourself that?
I was telling myself.
Okay, I was going to say, where was the proof? Yeah.
And I was fired
Okay.
from that first job. Then I tried to write a book. It was crappy. I tried to write several books. I even got an agent, and it was turned down. Lots of people in lots of ways were telling me, but the dream wouldn't leave.
Okay. I love that. The dream wouldn't leave. That's why I have the title of my book, it's Peace, Possibilities, and Perspective, because I'm like you. I think that if people want something, if you wake up every day and you think something's possible, it almost always is. It just depends on how much work you want to put into it and how much you believe it and how much you want it. And I think if more people really could see, this is why I have this podcast. If more people can see other people living what's possible for them and having a beautiful life and one where they're, really happy doing work they love every day, the more you see it for other people, the more you know it's true for yourself. And if you don't see anyone doing anything you're doing, you start to doubt, well, maybe it's not possible, but it's not true. That's why it's the first chapter in my book.
No, that's so good, because the reason I started doing what I'm doing and speaking about, it was when I first started speaking to sell my books and writing about my story, I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed about the way I handled money growing up. I was so embarrassed to tell this. I remember my first speech I gave when Prince Charming came out, and I told my story. It was in the town where I live now. And I remember the next day seeing somebody walking down the street who was at that speech and crossing the street because I was so embarrassed to see her. So it's like, it's one thing to know, but the thing that kept me going, is I wanted to be a role model. I wanted to be a role model to say, you can screw up your life and you can still create wealth. And it's never too late. And it's not as hard as you think.
And you're living proof of it.
And I'm living proof.
Yeah. That's the best part. We need more people showing everyone, whether you're, 20 years old or 70 years old, you can change things. You're never stuck. Something better is always possible. And the more we can see proof of it and read proof of it, the more we're all.
The only thing that stands in the way of us and our dream is fear. And that's why way early on, after I interviewed my second book, Secrets of Six-Figure Women, I was a chronic under-earner. And I started interviewing these women, and I started making six figures, which was like 3 or 4 times more than what I'd ever made before I even finished writing the book. And I realized the secret to doing what I wanted to do is the willingness to do what you fear. And I took a piece of paper, just regular computer paper, and I'm looking at it now. It says, do what you fear, that's how you succeed. And I framed it. And then I saw a quote underneath, and I wrote, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And so the key is, yes, you can have this desire, but fear will always get in the way. It will always block you. And so whenever I get scared and I get a little panicky, and then I always say, oh, goody, no goody. This is a sign I'm going to the next level. This is a sign. So I just do what I fear. That is, I think, if you ask one secret to success, it is do what you fear. Because success in anything, whether it's making more money or losing more weight, it always lies just outside your comfort zone.
That's a great place to end. You're right. Do it. Yes, it always lies just outside your comfort zone. I love that. I'm gonna write down those quotes that you said and put them in the notes too, so people can see that, because those are brilliant. I'm glad you're still looking at that. You have to have that stuff around you to remind you, because we all just get mirrored in the daily stuff, and we forget what's possible. We forget what we've achieved. We forget that we can move past the fear and do great things. And so we need reminders of that. So I'm a big person on putting quotes around too, because they're really important. All right. So tell people where they can find your books, or what's the easiest way to see everything you've written? Just go to your website.
Yeah. And I have a brand new book out too. It's called Rewire for Wealth. So I'm very excited about that. And you can find anything you want to know on my website, Barbara Huson, Barbara-Huson.com.
And do you still do coaching?
Oh yeah, I never stopped. I do coaching, and I do group coaching, and I have this wonderful. It was a long time in coming. I always had this dream to create a really safe community where women could talk about money and wealth building, particularly wealth building, as women.
Yes.
And so check out my community. It's called The Wealth Connection. And we have group coaching, and we have experts, and we have classes and book clubs. And it's a wonderful community.
I'm so glad you're doing that too, because I was on one of your Facebook group calls in the beginning when your book was published a couple of months ago. And I think it's very valuable. Number one, obviously one-on-one coaching is always valuable, but to hear the questions in the groups, it's usually something someone else, at least one other person is wondering anyways. And then to hear your feedback right then and there, you're helping all those other people who probably had a similar question. It's very powerful. And I think you're really good at it. So I'm glad that you're continuing to do that, because it works. And people like women, I'll speak for myself, want to be around other women that want to build their wealth and not be afraid and not be ashamed and not be, not feel bad for wanting more. And you're encouraging all that. So I thank you for that.
Good. Because one of the things I want to do is take the charge. And for some reason, I've never said this before, but I realized when I heard you talking, I want to take the charge out of the word wealth, because there's so many different, some people get really excited. Many people say, oh no, that's not me. I can't. Oh, that's bad. That's wrong. I want to take the charge out of that, because wealth, I think we need to redefine, or maybe no one's really defined what wealth means. I have never seen a definition, but my definition of wealth, it is not an amount, it's a mindset. And wealth simply means you have more than enough and you know it. You have more than enough than you need. You have savings, you have emergency savings, you have investments, you have enough to cover your needs and to help you live life on your own terms, and you know it. Because you can have millions and be financially insecure. Mm-hmm. And you can have far less and not be, because if you don't have well-being, if you don't have peace of mind, then no matter how much money you have, it's like, what's the point?
It won't make a difference. Yeah. It's so important. You said so many wise things. So I can't wait to release a podcast and highlight those things. And this will be out there for people. The reason I created this is so that there's a library of conversations and proof for anyone out there that wants to say, like, I want to do something, and is it possible? And you're one great example of that. So thanks for coming on today and talking to me. And I really admire you and all the work you're doing. And I want you to keep doing it. I'm glad that you didn't just stop because you became successful, because I think the more people you can talk to, the more healing is going to be taking place for women, especially.
Thank you. Thanks, Julie. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's so special to talk to you. And check out her website, barbara-huson.com, and all her awesome books. You're not going to be, I don't even know which one I would recommend, because I've read all of them. I don't even know which one I would start with, but if someone said, I want to start with one of them, would it be your newest one?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Whatever you're led to. The first one, Prince Charming, has to do with managing money. The second two, Secrets of Six-Figure Women and Overcoming Under-Earning, have to do with making money. Sacred Success has to do with really creating wealth in a very different way than what the world models.
Yeah.
And Rewire for Wealth is bringing the neuroscience into the mix.
Yeah. And for those people that have never heard the term neuroscience, it's here to stay. Everyone's talking about it now, thank goodness. And thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Julie.
All right. Have a great day. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you love this content, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you found us on. You can get all my social media links in the description below. Help us keep the momentum going so that every person can live their lives happily, doing work they love.